Make some noise, Black family. How's everybody doing tonight? Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I want to thank Brother Garfield and his fraternity, the good brothers there in the Latino fraternity, for making this happen and getting me here to Pace University, Pleasantville campus. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Umar Ifatunde Oguntade. I'm a doctor of clinical psychology, which I earned from the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. I'm a certified school psychologist, studies completed at Millersville University in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where I also earned both of my undergraduate degrees in psychology and political science. Lehigh University is where I did my principal work, getting my master's in educational leadership there. Lehigh University, getting my master's in educational leadership there, and a third master's degree while at PCOM as well in clinical psychology. So 6 degrees, 3 universities, and I'm contemplating doing something I never thought I would do again, and that was go back to the classroom to get a law degree, because we don't have a major Black educational attorney in the United States. So in my expertise as a school psychologist fighting against the misdiagnosing of our African children. And when I speak of African tonight, I'm speaking inclusively and pan-Africanistically of all members of the African family. So when I say African, I'm talking about my Puerto Rican Africans, my Cuban Africans, my Dominican Africans, my Belizean Africans, my Venezuelan Africans. All African people are included whenever I open my mouth, because I am a pan-Africanist. And so when I speak of saving African children, I'm talking about the brown ones too, but I don't have to say brown because they're already a member of the Black family. And so we have too many of our boys, whether they're a Spanish-speaking African or an English-speaking African or a immigrant African, too many of our African children are being labeled as retarded and intellectually disabled and reading and math disabled and ADHD and conduct disorder and autistic and emotionally disturbed and this and that and this and that, when the true problem is that they simply have not been taught in the first place. And so for those of you who are here who are parents, please make sure you fight back and push back against the over-medicalization, the over-evaluation, the over-special education of our brown and Black African boys, our Spanish-speaking African children, as well as our English-speaking African children, and all in between. Before I leave, I'm going to make sure you have my number in case you want to reach out to me. I have this dream of mine where I want to speak in every African community in the world before I go back to the ancestors, and I've been to every continent. Yesterday, I just got back from visiting our brothers and sisters in Curacao, as well as Aruba and Bonaire. And of course, on the 20th of next month, I'll go to South Africa and then Ethiopia, Addis Ababa for African Liberation Day. But I haven't been to Cuba yet, which is the home of my paternal great-grandfather, Cicero Noel Miles, who I met not long before he transitioned to join the ancestors. He was a Spanish-speaking Cuban from Havana. So I do have some Latino African heritage in my blood. With that being said, I want to go directly into the challenges that we have. And these challenges that we have as African people are not limited to the Spanish-speaking African or the Latino African or the continental African or the American African here in the 50 states. Those of us who are the offspring of the victims of the worst human tragedy in recorded history. We have a lot of schisms amongst us, a lot of isms. We got light skin supremacy problems. We got dark skin supremacy problems. We got English language speaking supremacy problems. We got Spanish speaking language supremacy problems. And what's ironic about them all is, or what I find to be so interesting, is that as African people in the diaspora, we tend to focus more on where the slave ship brought our ancestors as opposed to where the slave ship picked them up from. There was no place called America 400 years ago. There was no place called Puerto Rico 400 years ago. There was no New York City, Philadelphia, LA, Oakland. There was no Colombia, Venezuela. There was no Dominican Republic. Those names come later. What were you before Puerto Rico was called Puerto Rico? What were you before New York City was called New York City? What were you before Cuba was called Cuba? You were an African. All of us were. But in our sojourn across the world, the white power structure played a game that it still plays amongst African people today, and that is the game of divide and conquer and separate and rule. And they put the light against the dark, no matter what the language was. They put the Latino against the American African. They put the continental African against us. They put the Caribbean African against each other. Our brothers and sisters in Australia, they made us think we had far less in common than we actually do, exploiting superficial differences. And what makes it so interesting is the very person you don't like because they speak another language or have a different complexion or their hair texture is a little different from yours may very well be your cousin. Y'all may very well come from the same traditional African kingdom. Y'all might both be Yoruba. Y'all might both be Igbo. Y'all might both be Maasai. Y'all might both be Zulu. You might both be Swazi. You might both be Khoi. You might both be Xhosa. Look how ridiculous we are as African people to be fighting each other when truth of the matter is we may all have very well come from the very same village, our ancestors that is. So we have to get over it, and we have to get over it quick. One of the things I always talk about when I'm dealing with Pan-Africanism is to make sure people understand what Pan-Africanism is and what Pan-Africanism is not. And I'm going to go into that right now. Pan-Africanism is the black man's oldest formal political ideology. Some people would trace its birth to the Haitian Revolution, which began on my birthday, August the 21st, but many years before I was born in 1791. Some people would trace Pan-Africanism to the Chicago Conference on Africa that took place in 1893, I want to say it was. Some people would trace Pan-Africanism to other events. I would say Pan-Africanism is as old as Africa because we are the first people to circumnavigate the planet. We were the only people on the planet all by ourselves for at least 250,000 years. Nobody else. If we don't leave Africa, white people never evolve. If we don't leave Africa, Chinese never evolve. If we don't leave Africa, you never get an East Indian, you never get a Native American. The African is the mother and father of all human groups. Those groups come from us. They are in our DNA. And this is indisputable now. We've had the Harvard Genome Project. We had all kinds of research, black and white research, that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that Africa is the cradle of civilization, that the black woman is the mother of all civilization, and the black man is the father of all civilization. There is no humanity without us. Every group on the planet comes from us. We're the only people who came from God. Everybody else came from us. Which is interesting because when you get into the religious conversations, and as Pan-Africanists, we don't take no issue with religion. We believe in freedom of worship. I don't care if you're a Hebrew. I don't care if you're a Christian. I don't care if you're a Seventh-day Adventist, a Jehovah's Witness, a Muslim. It makes no difference to me. Your religion is only my concern to the extent that it interferes with your ability to struggle for African liberation. If your Christianity does not stop you from struggling for African liberation, I have no issue with your Christianity. If your Islam does not stop you from struggling for African liberation, I have no issue with your Islam. If you being a Jehovah's Witness or a Methodist or an Episcopalian doesn't stop you from struggling for African liberation, I have no issue with you. But on the flip side, if you say you cannot struggle for African liberation because your God doesn't allow you to see color, we have a problem. I can't struggle with you. If you tell me you can't work with other African people because they haven't been saved, or they haven't taken their shahada, or they haven't undergone a particular religious experience, if you say you have to be of my own belief in order for me to struggle with you, I have a problem, because now your religion just became the enemy of African liberation. And let us be real clear. No weapon has been greater. No weapon has been used more against African people at home, which is Africa, and abroad in the diaspora, than religion. It has been used to make us inferior. It has been used to brainwash us against who our true enemies are. It has been used to make us adopt a politically ridiculous, colorblind agenda. How can you afford to not see color when you've been victimized by your race your entire experience outside of the diaspora? Who benefits by African people not seeing color? Who benefits by you not putting African people first? Always ask yourself that question when somebody gives you any set of circumstances. Who benefits from this? When a European came into Africa, he had the Bible, we had all the resources. By the time he left, he controlled all the resources and we had the Bible. Napoleon Bonaparte, and I'm no fan of his, of course he lost in the Haitian Revolution to Toussaint L'Ouverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines. And Napoleon said, religion is what keeps the poor man from killing the rich one. I'm not against religion, but your religion must be an instrument of liberation, or it is a waste of time. I was raised Muslim and Christian, so I know all about the church. I know all about the masjid. And if I'm going to be plainly honest with you, there's no religion on the face of the earth that serves African liberation. And you cannot be a pan-Africanist if you still got that white Jesus hanging up in your house, in your dorm room, in your car, or in your Bible. Because before we can liberate ourselves politically, before we can liberate ourselves economically, before we can liberate ourselves socially, before we can liberate ourselves culturally, we have to liberate ourselves psychologically. I want you to hear me well, Puerto Rican Africans. I want you to hear me well, American Africans. I want you to hear me well, all my Latino Africans, my continental Africans, my American Africans. There is no liberation for our race that does not begin with psychological liberation until you change the way that you think about yourself, your people, and your future. Until you change the way that you think about who we are, and what we must become, you change nothing else about us. Reparations is a hot topic right now, ain't it? Everybody's talking about reparations this like it's some new thing. Reparations grew out of the Pan-Africanist movement. It was Pan-Africanism that gave birth to reparations, not YouTube or the YouTube opportunists. It was Pan-Africanists who gave birth to reparations. But guess what? The U.S. government could give us $1 trillion. The French government could give us $1 trillion. The Italian government, the German government, the Belgian government, they could give us $1 trillion. But guess what? Without psychological liberation, I don't care how much money you get from the outside, until you change the dynamic in the inside, nothing else will change. That's why the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, who gave us the red, black, and green flag and the largest black movement in modern history, Mr. Garvey said, don't take the kinks out of your hair, black sister, take the kinks out of your mind. I'm gonna get to the weaves and perms later. Because we cannot expect little black girls to grow up with pride. We cannot expect little black girls to grow up with self-respect while adult black women imitate Caucasians. Now, some of you have naturally curly hair. No problem with that. Some of you have naturally straight hair. No problem with that. We got African brothers and sisters in New Guinea, Papua New Guinea, in the South Pacific. They're naturally blonde and they have naturally blue eyes. Some of our Puerto Rican African brothers and sisters got green and blue, and our Cuban brothers and sisters and Dominican brothers and sisters got green and blue. I got nieces and nephews who got green and blue eyes. So that's not the issue. If that's your natural color, so be it. But for those of you who have the original ancient skin color and the original ancient hair color and the original ancient hair texture and the original ancient phenotype of our great-grand ancestors on the Nile Valley of Africa, why would you dare snuff that out? Why would you dare kill the greatness in your DNA? One of the greatest victories of white supremacy is that it made black people want to imitate their oppressor. And most of us now still want to imitate our oppressor. And every last one of you in here right now. I don't care if you speak English, Spanish, Portuguese. I don't care if you speak Wolof or Swahili. Every last one of you, after you graduate from Pace University, after you get your bachelor's and your master's and your doctorate, you are either going to be a benefit to African people or a detriment to African people. You will either be a plus for your people or you will be a minus. You will either be a freedom fighter for African people or you will be a part of the coonocracy. Some of you can't wait to join the coonocracy. Some of you go to sleep dreaming of being a coon. You can't wait for the white power structure to draft you and offer you a job to sell out your people. You got coons all over the world. You got Ghanaian coons, you got New York City coons, you got Puerto Rican coons. You got all kind of African people selling out their people around the world. But let me get back to what Pan-Africanism is. Point number one, and these are in no particular order. I will be authoring a book on the principles of Pan-Africanism because we need that. Number one, all African people are one family. All African people are one family. Whether you're in Puerto Rico speaking Spanish, whether you are in Senegal speaking Wolof, whether you in South Africa speaking Zulu, whether you are in Kenya speaking Maasai, whether you are in Brazil, the largest African community outside of the continent is Brazil. They speak Portuguese. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you got the straight hair or the curly hair or the nappy hair. Whether you got the blue, black, purple, beautiful skin of our ancient grand ancestors or whether you have light skin. Whether you are Muslim or Christian, whether you pledge allegiance to this flag or that flag, we are one African people. We are one African family. We are one African race. Now here's the kicker for Pan-Africanists. We identify as being African before anything else. Nothing supersedes your Africanity. You're never a Christian who happens to be an African. You're an African who happens to be a Christian. You're never a Muslim who happens to be an African. You're an African who happens to be a Muslim. You're never a Puerto Rican who happens to have some African DNA. You're an African who happens to be a Puerto Rican. Why? Africa existed before Jesus existed. Africa existed before Muhammad existed. Africa existed before the Dominican Republic existed. Africa existed before any country you pledge your loyalty to, any religion you belong to, any language you speak. Africa is older than that. Your race is the only thing you belong to that God chose for you. Everything else you belong to, you chose or your parents chose. You Christian, you love your religion, nothing wrong with that. But you could leave the church tomorrow. You Muslim, you love your religion, nothing wrong with that. You could leave the mosque tomorrow. Your fraternities, your sororities, you can leave them tomorrow. Your professional affiliations, you can leave them tomorrow. Your nationality, you can denounce it tomorrow. Your language, you can change it tomorrow. What is the one thing you belong to, chosen by God, fixed at birth, that you have no control over, and that is your Africanity. And that's why we identify as African family first. I'm giving you this because too many people walking around call themselves Pan-Africanists who really are not. If you don't put the race first, you are not a Pan-Africanist. Pan-Africanism means all of us are one. So that means if you like to practice petty tribalism, if you like to put the American African above the Caribbean African, if you think you better because you from America and somebody else is from Australia, That's not Pan-Africanism. You think you better because you light skinned and somebody dark? That's not Pan-Africanism. You think you better because you belong to this religion and they belong to that religion, or your hair is straight and their hair is curly? Any tribalism in your blood prevents you from being a Pan-Africanist. That's a hypocrite. When I go to Africa, the first thing I tell my brothers and sisters, when I'm in Nigeria, I say, listen, I know we got issues here. There was a civil war between the Igbo and the Yoruba. I understand that. But when Dr. Umar is in Lagos, when Dr. Umar is in Port Harcourt, when Dr. Umar is in Enugu State, when I'm in Ogun State, we are all African people here. I don't care which family you come from. When I'm in the Caribbean islands, and I get the petty conflicts in there, I don't care if you Bahamas or Bermuda, while I'm here, we African. I don't care if you Jamaican or Haitian, while I'm here, we African. I don't care if you Dominican, Cuban, or Puerto Rican, while I'm here, we are African. And guess what? There was no benefit to slavery, but I will tell you this. Given that we are the diasporan African, which means we're mixed with the blood of every African nation on the continent, when we go back to Africa, we are the peacekeepers. See, when I sit at the table in Africa, they don't have to worry about whether I'm going to take the side of the Wolof or the side of the Mandingo. When I'm in the Caribbean islands, they don't have to worry about, is he going to side with the Puerto Ricans or the Dominicans? I'm mixed with everything. And as a result of that, I am impartial. They can trust me to facilitate that session. There's a benefit to being Pan-African. So number one, we identify as African. And let me say this. We are not racist. I want white people to get all the blessings God has in store for them. I want red people to get all the blessings God got in store for them. I want yellow people to get all the blessings God got in store for them. I want non-African brown people to get all the blessings God has in store for them. We are not interested in oppressing nobody, but we claim the continent of Africa for ourselves. And nobody in Africa who is not an African can be called so. If you are in Africa and you are not an African, you are either an invader, a colonizer, or the descendant of one. No Chinese can call himself African. No Arab can call himself African. No East Indian can call himself African. Why? Because Africa is the land of black African people. I can't go to China and call myself Chinese. So why can he come in Africa and call himself an African? I can't go to East India and call myself an Indian. So why can they come to Africa and call themselves Africans? And let us be clear. The only reason why the other human races want to come into Africa and claim that they African too is so they receive no opposition as they go about the continent pillaging resources and stealing the mineral wealth of Mother Africa. Let us be very clear about that. I've been to China. China is very racist against African people. Very racist against African people. But yet they'll come into Africa and say, I'm an African. No, you're not. You are an opportunist. You have to learn how to think deeply and politically, because to be a Pan-Africanist, you have to be what? A statesman, a stateswoman for the African race. Yes, you should be involved in the politics of New York if you're a New Yorker. Yes, you should be involved in the politics of Texas if you are a Texan. Yes, you should be involved in the politics of California if you're a Californian. Yes, you should be involved in the politics of Puerto Rico if you're a Puerto Rican. Yes, you should be involved in the politics of Haiti if you're Haitian. But on top of your national loyalty must be your racial consciousness. See, let me explain something to y'all. White people don't all get along. I know this because I work with them. Some Jews think they better than Italians. Some Italians think they better than the Irish. Some Irish think they better than the Greeks. Some Greeks think they're better than the Anglo-Saxons. But when it comes to doing what? Making sure white folks control the economics of the planet, they stop fighting long enough to keep raping Africa, and then they go back to fighting after they take care of the business of the white race. Pakistanis don't always get along with the Indians. They got issues, but when it comes to the best interests of the Indian people, they work it out. Iraqis don't necessarily like the Kuwaitis. The Kuwaitis don't necessarily like the Iranians. But guess what? When it comes to the best interests of the Arab people, they stop the petty beef until they take care of the business of the race. Chinese don't necessarily like Japanese, and Japanese don't necessarily like Cambodians, and Cambodians don't necessarily get along with the Vietnamese. But when it comes to the best interests of Asian people, they stop the fighting long enough to take care of the business of the Asian race. There's only one race on the planet who can't stop fighting long enough to get their act together, and that's us, African people. The most honorable Marcus Garvey said we were cursed with petty differences. If black people don't have a reason to fight, we'll make one up. Skin color, language, education, light skin, dark skin, Muslim, Christian, curly hair, straight hair, Spanish, English. And the white power structure laughing at all of us. Because everybody needs to understand this, and this is my second point of Pan-Africanism. And Brother Garfield, keep me posted on the time. I'm gonna keep going to give me like a 10-minute, because I'll catch the African Holy Ghost real quick. The second point, and you better get this, because people always ask the question, why are we worrying about Africa? We got problems in New York City. While I'm worrying about Africa, I got problems in the Dominican Republic. What am I worrying about Africa for? I got problems in Venezuela. The black community in Colombia got problems. Panama blacks got big problems. We got Africans in Mexico, big problems. Why am I worrying about Africa for? 20,000 miles away. What good is that for me? You know why? Because as Africa goes, so goes all African people. I've been all over the world, brothers and sisters. And guess what I've learned? Wherever I go, European Jews are respected. Wherever I go, European Jews got power. You know why? Because Israel is respected and Israel got power. Wherever I go, Chinese are respected. Chinese are in an economic power position. Chinese are always upheld and treated with respect and reverence. You know why? Because China is powerful. Why do East Indians get respect around the world? Because India is powerful. And guess what? Wherever you go in the world, African people are disrespected and ignored, even in Africa. Let me ask you a question. Can you name a single black economy run by black people on the planet Earth? I'm gonna ask you one more time. Can you name a single country, Africa, Central or South America, anywhere in the Caribbean, where we are in control of our own economics? Anybody? There's not one. There's not one. There is no black economy on earth ran by black people. And there is no liberation for African people until we get control of our economics. Black people in America, we're a $2 trillion economy. We're the richest group of Africans in the world in terms of income. The richest. But can I ask you a question? Do we own anything? Where is our infrastructure? Where are our institutions? We keep talking about Black Wall Street, Black Wall Street, but no city in America do I find African people owning their own hospital, their own bank, their own supermarket, and their own school. Those are the 4 essential institutions. Independent black hospital, independent black bank. You need a hospital to save the people, a bank to invest in the people, supermarket to feed the people, and a school to teach the people. Why we ain't got that? There's a Chinatown in damn near every major city. You got little Vietnam, little Cambodia, little Italy. Where's little Africa? You know why we ain't got it? Because something slavery did to the black man and woman. I don't care if your ancestors was enslaved in Cuba. I don't care if your ancestors was enslaved in Brazil, enslaved in North Philadelphia. Slavery stole from African people the desire. And I want you young people to hear me, because you are the generation that is supposed to fix this. Slavery stole from African people the natural, God-given desire to control your own destiny. Do you realize we're the only people not concerned about controlling our own community? We're the only people not concerned about controlling our own destiny. As soon as the Chinese show up on the shores of America, soon as an Arab shows up on the shores of America, soon as an East Indian shows up on the shores of America, they build in their own communities. They're looking for a piece of a city to call their own shops, their own businesses, their own import, export, and all we want to do is look good. Half y'all in here, soon as you get your student loan check, you in New York City shopping because you want to look good. Tell me I'm wrong. I don't care if you're from Belize or the Bronx. You want to look good. Looking good is more important than having power. African people, we in pursuit of money. White people in pursuit of power. Father Rothschild said, what? Give me control over people's money. I care not who makes the laws. Give me control over people's money. I care not who makes the laws. We chasing money. Money don't make a difference. Look at all the black entertainers we got. Look at all the athletes and entertainers we got. All that money. And don't use none of it for the benefit of African people. They might give out some turkeys for Thanksgiving. Who the hell need another turkey? You worth $500 million and the best you can do for the black community is some stale ass turkeys. Some sneakers. Another playground dedication. That ain't what we need. We need institutions and industries, brothers and sisters. So number two, as Africa goes, so goes all African people. You will never be respected. I don't care where you move to in this world until Africa is respected. That's why Africa matters. You want to know why black folks get killed by the police in broad daylight and nothing happens? Who gonna speak up for you? What African country gonna stand up and say the next time you kill one of mine in your country, don't come over here looking for no gas. Next time you kill one of mine in your country, don't come over here looking for no oil. Next time you kill one of mine in your country, don't come over here looking for no diamonds or no coltan. Next time you kill one of mine in your country, you ain't getting another piece of mineral from under my soil. Because remember, the African continent is the only continent that can survive without any other continent. No other continent can survive without Africa. There is no military without Africa. There's no atomic bombs without Africa. There's no cell phone or no internet without Africa. The most essential minerals necessary for the military and technological age are under the ground in Africa. Everybody talking about Haiti and why America keep on destabilizing Haiti. You know why America keep on destabilizing Haiti? Because they have a mineral, and I'm forgetting the name of the mineral. There's only two countries in the world that has the mineral. Haiti is one of them, and Haiti has the most of it. They have the purest form of this mineral, and this is a mineral. A metal that can withstand heat 1,000 times longer than any other metal in the world. And the reason America needs to keep Haiti destabilized is to make sure no other country can come in, strike a deal with Haiti, and get some of that metal, which would make them a military giant overnight. Every last one of you should be reading a newspaper a day. You should be reading a global newspaper a month. Understand your world so you can decide on how you're going to set your place in it. It's not just about graduating from college and getting a job. That's not why you just here for that. Your ancestors didn't send you here to get a job. You were sent to earth to make a difference. How are you going to do that? As Africa goes, so goes the world. Until we make Africa strong enough to look out for us, police gonna keep on killing black folks. There's Chinese gangs. We got Chinese gangs in Philly. They kill each other too. I ain't seen the police kill a Chinese gang member yet because they know there's gonna be repercussions from China. That hurricane that hit Puerto Rico that the United States of America took so long to respond to, they would have never took that long to respond to that hurricane or the Haitian earthquake if they were being pressured by African countries. But then you get Negroes who say, Africa don't do nothing for me. Well, she can't, because you have to make us strong enough to look out for you. We got the money, Africa got the resources, we got to marry them together. We got the income, Africa got the resources, we got to marry them together. But the problem with too many of us, all we want to do is become a better version of a white man. Imitation. is your priority. You want to imitate people. And no disrespect to the white women in the room. I don't have a problem with no white women. I respect all women no matter what the color. But you young black men in here, don't call yourself a pan-Africanist and you're not dating an African woman. You are a sellout. I'm a pan-Africanist. No, you not. You're a coon. You think it's a coincidence that black men date outside the race more than all other men put together? You think it's a coincidence young men in college date outside the race? Black men in college and in the world date outside the race more than any other man. That's because of slavery and self-hatred. That's because of slavery and self-hatred. Marriage is a business, y'all. Marriage is a business. Kobe Bryant is with the ancestors now. And the reason Kobe Bryant is with the ancestors now is because Kobe Bryant was about to start his own professional basketball league headquartered in China. The American white power structure couldn't allow that. China is America's #1 competitor. They couldn't have Kobe Bryant going to China, starting a professional basketball league, competing with the American league. Kobe Bryant was also ending his contract with Nike, and he was starting his own player-owned sneaker brand. America couldn't let Kobe come up with another sneaker brand that would compete with the #1 sneaker brand in America. That's why the helicopter went down. Kobe Bryant was murdered. It was not an accident. And they made LeBron James wear his number on his sneakers the night before while LeBron James played in Kobe Bryant's hometown of Philadelphia. Why is Michael Jackson dead? Michael Jackson is dead because he owned half of Sony Records. He owned all of the Beatles catalog, a portion of Elvis's music, and they wanted the Beatles music back. Michael Jackson wouldn't sell it to him. Michael Jackson was in negotiations to purchase Marvel Studios, brothers and sisters. Marvel. That's Black Panther, that's Xfinity Wars. Michael Jackson was going to buy it up. And soon when Michael Jackson tried to buy Marvel Studios, he got hit with the pedophilia accusations. Why is Whitney Houston dead? Whitney Houston is dead because Whitney Houston was about to order an audit on her earnings, her royalties. She also wanted her masters back in her publishing. So she died of a so-called drowning in the tub. Same way Jimi Hendrix died, best guitar player in the history of mankind, and he was murdered because his agent was a secret MI6 officer for British intelligence, and Jimi Hendrix was going to finance the Black Panther Party, so they had to kill him. And Sam Cooke had to die. First black man to own his own masters in the music industry. He was close friends with Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, and Dr. King, and he told Dr. King and Malcolm X that once they come together and stop fighting, Sam Cooke was going to finance the civil rights movement himself. R. Kelly might very well be guilty of the accusations. I don't know. I wasn't there. But that's not why he's in jail. R. Kelly is in jail because a certain music company, who I'm not going to mention right now, started stealing R. Kelly's masters and playing his unpublished music without his permission. And once R. Kelly started questioning getting his masters back in control of his publishing, he ends up in jail for a crime he's been committing since he was a teenager. Why was Bill Cosby in jail? Bill Cosby was in jail because Bill Cosby, him and his wife Camille, owned a home in Massachusetts under which there was some oil. And the second largest oil company in the world wanted to drill under the home of Bill and Camille Cosby in Massachusetts. And when Bill and Camille Cosby said, "You're not drilling under this house," and they organized all their neighbors so they wouldn't let none of them drill, next thing you know, he gets accused of 50 old women who say he molested them 30, 40 years ago. Now, I don't trivialize sexual violence against women, but guess what? There's not a white woman on the planet Earth who gets sexually abused by a black man in his prime. In the 1970s, Bill Cosby was the #1 black television personality in the world. He's the first black man to have his own miniseries on television. The Cosby Show was the #1 ranked black sitcom of all time. And Bill Cosby sexually harassed you in 1970 when you was young and beautiful, but you wait till you old and nasty in your 50s and 60s before you tell somebody about it? Bill Cosby went to jail because he didn't want to give up the house so they can get the oil. Why am I bringing this up? You got to read and study, and you don't just take what people tell you to be true. Develop your own mindset. You ain't even got to take what I say to be true. Go on to research it and find it out for yourself. What's the third principle of pan-Africanism? We talked about we identify as being African first. We talked about as Africa goes, so goes all African people. The third, self-determination. You know what that means? Anything we do by ourselves and for ourselves. There is no non-African participation in our movements. There is no non-African money in our organizations. You don't know why black people haven't made more progress in this country since Dr. King's assassination 55 years ago? Because we taken too much money from the government, too much money from the white philanthropic societies, too much money from white America. The hand that pays is the hand that rules. You'll never get free as long as your organizations are being financed by non-African people. That's why Marcus Garvey never took a penny from another race. There was once a white man in New York wanted to give Marcus Garvey a large donation. Marcus Garvey said, tell him to keep his money. What is to be done for us must be done by us. Some of y'all know I got a school I'm building in Wilmington, Delaware. Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy. First school in the history of America built exclusively by the African diaspora. We will have our grand opening sometime this summer. All of you are invited. First school in the history of this country built with donations from every African community in the world. Never done before. And some people will come to me, Dr. Umar, I can help you get some COVID grants. I can help you get some Joe Biden money. I can help you get some Walmart donations. For what? If Walmart opens my school, Walmart owns it. If the U.S. government finances my school, the U.S. government owns it. People say, why don't you open up a charter school, Dr. Umar? You used to be a charter school principal. Yeah, I used to be a charter school principal, and I used to be a charter school vice principal, and I don't want to be no charter school principal. You know why? Because charter schools are ran by the state, controlled by the state, and when they have a problem with you, they will sabotage you, accuse you of financial mismanagement, low test scores, and shut you down. The school that we own in Delaware was a black charter school, and they sabotaged the founder and put him out of business. It might be harder to do it on your own, brothers and sisters. But you better learn that that's the best way to get it done. Don't you start taking money from other groups. The more money you take, the more indebted to them you are. Why do you think Africa's still in the position she in with all the aid Africa gets? People say Africans must not know how to solve their problems because America been pumping money. France been pumping money. The UK been pumping money. Belgium been pumping money. The UN been pumping money. The World Bank been pumping money. The International Monetary Fund been pumping money. Why Africa still messed up with all the resources she got? You know why? Because whenever they give Africa a loan, whenever they give a Caribbean island a loan, whenever they give a Central or South American African country a loan, they put 3 requirements with that loan. Requirement number 1, 1,000% interest or more. You need $5 million. You want to build schools in Rwanda. She wants $5 million. She's the president of Rwanda. And guess what America says? I'm going to give you $5 million, but I'm going to charge you 1,000% on every dollar. How long will it take Rwanda to pay back that loan? You'll be paying it back for the next 100 years. This is how they keep Africa in debt, by exploiting them with the interest rates. Number 2, 2 minutes. Number 2, they'll tell Africa, you have to have a free market economy. I need y'all to understand this. This is real important. I'm going to be quiet because I know we got a break and then we got the Q&A. Y'all be able to ask me anything you want. Second thing they do is they demand that African countries participate in the free market economy. You know what that means? You're the president of Senegal. In Senegal, y'all have your own salt. You don't need Morton salt. You don't need Whole Foods salt. You don't want nobody selling salt in Senegal because Senegal got your own salt. You the president of Ghana. Y'all got palm oil. You don't need Crisco oil. You don't need canola oil. Y'all got your own oil. But guess what America going to tell you? Guess what France going to tell you? Guess what Belgium going to tell you? They're going to say, we know you got your own salt, but because I gave you $5 million to build some schools, you have to let all the American salt companies come into your country and compete with your homegrown salt company. So let me ask you all a question. If she has her own salt, but she can't protect her salt market, America says as a consequence of the loan, you got to let all America salt companies come into your country. What do you think happens to your salt industry within 5 years? Sabotaged and shut down. You got your own palm oil. What happens to your homegrown palm oil industry after 5 years where you got to compete with all the American, British, French, or Italian oil companies? You be sabotaged and shut down. This is why African countries, Caribbean countries, Central and South American countries are importing food that they grow themselves. Why are you importing tea if you grow tea? Why are you importing chicken if you can raise your own chicken? Why are you importing things that you can make yourself? Because the European countries of the world sabotage Africa's growth. I want to close with this. And before we take the break, take your phone out. I'm going to give you my number so you can reach me. If you are a psychology major and you need some advice about psychology, feel free to hit me. If you are an education major and you need some advice about education, feel free to hit me. If you are a political science major and you need some advice about political science, you can hit me as well. If you want to work at the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, please send me your resume. Ladies, you cannot work at my school if you're not happy to be nappy. There will be no weave, no perm, no European hair color unless it is naturally yours. There will be no school teacher in my school imitating white women. We're imitating ourselves. Phone number 215-989-9858. I repeat, 215-989-9858. Once more, 215-989-9858. And I also want to say this, and give a hand to Brother Garfield and the Latino brothers who put this together. But I want to come back because we're going to have to do part 2 after we do the Q&A. But I'm going to have to come back and do part 2 because there's a lot more we got to talk about and we got to go over. But I want to close with this quote. My family came to America in 1701. A black man named Bailey, stolen from Nigeria. He was brought to Talbot County, Eastern Shore, Maryland. He married a black woman by the name of Selah, for whom my 11-year-old daughter is named. In 1745, Grandmom Selah had Grandmom Jenny. In 1774, Grandmom Jenny had Grandma Betsy. Grandma Betsy was born a slave in Talbot County, Maryland, but she married a free black man, my grandpop Isaac. Between them were born 12 children. One daughter was named Harriet, and another daughter was named Young Betsy, my 5 times great-grandmother. These 2 black women were raped by Aaron Anthony, the white man who owned our family. And as a result of that rape, in February of 1818, my Aunt Harriet gave birth to the greatest black leader in American history. His name was Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. At the age of 20, Cousin Frederick ran away from slavery in Baltimore, through Wilmington, up to Philadelphia, and on to New York. He changed his name once he got to New York to hide his identity on the fugitive slave trail. So Frederick Bailey became Frederick Douglass. The very next year in 1819, my grandmother, Young Betsy, gave birth to Frederick's half-brother and first cousin, my 4 times great-grandfather, Stephen Henry Bailey. Stephen and Frederick were brothers because the slave master was their father, but they were also cousins because the slave master raped 2 sisters. My grandfather Stephen married my grandmom Caroline. On November the 14th, 1841, they gave birth to my 3 times great-grandfather, George Washington Bailey, the first black public school teacher in Denton, Maryland, hometown of Harriet Tubman's parents. The Civil War begins in 1861. Frederick Douglass doesn't fight, but he sends his 2 sons, my cousins Lewis and Charles. They go north to Boston, Massachusetts, and they fight in the Boston, Massachusetts 54th Colored Regiment. If you ever seen the movie Glory, Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman, that's the story of my cousins Lewis and Charles Douglass. But not only that, Martin Delaney, grandfather of pan-Africanism, his son was in the 54th Regiment. Sojourner Truth, the first black woman to win a case in court against a white man, her grandson was in the Massachusetts 54th. My grandfathers, Stephen and George, fought in the U.S. Colored Troops of Maryland, 9th Regiment, 19th Regiment. That means my grandfather was at Appomattox Courthouse where General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant. My grandfather was in Galveston, Texas on June 19th when General Gordon Granger read Special Order Number 3, emancipating all Africans held in bondage within the state of Texas, from which we get the Juneteenth holiday. My grandfather was there. I say that to say, don't let no history teacher tell you that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Abraham Lincoln didn't free the slaves. The slaves freed Abraham Lincoln. When the Civil War was over, Grandpa George married Grandma Manny. They had Grandma Caroline. She moved to Philadelphia. She had Grandma Vivian. Grandma Vivian marries a Spanish-speaking Cuban immigrant from Havana. Great-Grandpa Cicero. They had my Grandmama Ida, who passed 5 years ago. She married James Johnson. They had Jamal Johnson. He met and married Barbara. And on August the 21st in the ghettos of North Philadelphia, the anniversary of the Haitian Revolution, the anniversary of the Nat Turner Revolution, the anniversary of the George Jackson Revolution, I was born in North Philly. Frederick Douglass said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess the faith of freedom but deprecate agitation are like men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want the rain but can't stand the thunder or the lightning. They want the ocean but they're scared of the awful roar of the waves. He said, a man may not get all you pay for, but you will pay for everything that you get. And if we as a race are ever to become free of the injustices inflicted upon us, we will pay for their removal. You might pay with words, you might pay with money, you might pay with blows, you might have to pay with your life. But freedom is not free. Frederick Douglass said, for 20 years I prayed on my knees to God for freedom, but the good Lord above gave me no freedom until I got up off my knees and started praying with my feet. He said, you want respect from white people? Why do you look for pity? The man who pities you will never respect you, and the man who respects you has no need for pity. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Black power. Okay, number one, I will repeat it. Give me your first name, your year, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, grad school, your major in your hometown. Name, classification, major, hometown. Okay. It don't matter the order.
My name is Sydney Gardner. I am a junior. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm a child education major. And my question is, as a black lesbian myself, what are your views on the LGBT plus community?
Okay. Number one, I love all African people. That means you, right? Lesbian or straight. So that's number one, right? As pan-Africanists, we may disagree with different political positions and lifestyles that members of the race might espouse or practice, but we still love all African people, right? So that's number one. Number two, because the root word of nation and nature are both the same, nat. Embedded in that is the need to procreate and reproduce. And one of the essential functions of family and the traditional black family in particular is to reproduce. We do see same-sex relationships as a threat to the survival of the traditional black family because it does not allow the reproduction of our race. Now I want to go to another level. And I don't want you to take offense, Queen. You understand? Because we want to disagree, but we want to disagree in love. I need you to understand something, and I want all y'all to research this. I want all y'all to research this. Do not take my word for it. Go look it up. There's a document published in 1974 by then Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who was a trilateral and a Rockefeller Council on Foreign Relations member. It's called NSSM 200. You can download it off the internet. It's several hundred pages. You need to read it. NSSM 200, 1974, which talked about population control, particularly for African people. That was in 74. The same year, if not 1 year prior, the American Psychiatric Association declassified homosexuality as a mental disease and made it a regular form of relationship. Although they did that, they also said in their position paper that there was no scientific evidence to prove that people were born with that type of an inclination. What is the point you're making, Dr. Umar? The point that I'm making is that the CIA and the FBI helped fund the LGBTQ movement as a population control strategy. Let me go a step further. Where was Kamala Harris last week? In Ghana. Doing what? telling the president if you don't make same-sex relationships normal in here, it might affect your money. She threatened the president of Uganda that if you don't strike down the homosexual laws, we're going to cut your money. Trivia question: why does the United States government care at all how African countries choose to legislate family? It's because of population control. A homosexual black man in the United States of America has a 50% chance of dying before his natural age. Black women lead the world. Heterosexual black women are one of the highest AIDS, positive HIV diagnosis population in the world. The strategy is real simple. Homosexualize the males and let them infect the women. Population control. The Food and Drug Administration announced last year that for the first time since the 1960s, teenage pregnancy for black girls has dropped, and they don't know why. Of course we know why. Because former President Barack Insane Obama was given the agenda of going into the public schools and making the public schools safe for LGBTQ. Now there's something I bet you would agree with me on, and you know what that is? Whether you support same-sex relationships or not, I think we can all agree that prepubescent children have no business at all being introduced to any type of sex, whether it be heterosex or same-sex. So why are there so many public schools across America introducing same-sex relationships in kindergarten, first grade, second grade? Somebody just sent me a book in the mail last week called The Gay BCs. Now, listen to me. Listen. Now I'm gonna let you review. Don't be emotional though. Remember, once you get emotional, don't be emotional. We can't solve our problems that way. You understand? Children do not desire naturally an appetite for intimacy until prepubescence, right? 11, 12, 13. So if children don't desire sexual intimacy with the opposite sex until their body starts preparing for them to reproduce, what is the purpose of teaching gay sex or straight sex to kindergartners? You want to brainwash, you want to indoctrinate, you want to socialize, and you want to manipulate, all in the service of what? Population control. What did former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton say? She said the number one threat to American foreign interests was what? Terrorism? No. Overpopulation. And which continent is projected by the United Nations to have the largest population in the world in the next 50 years? Africa. Now, here's another question for you. Why didn't Kamala Harris go to Iran or Iraq or Saudi Arabia, which are some of America's biggest trading partners, where homosexuality is illegal? She didn't threaten to cut off their money if they didn't make gay marriages legal. They're only threatening to cut off Africa's money if they don't make gay marriages legal, because they're trying to get rid of us. There's a scientific movement called eugenics. Please look it up. EUGENICS, eugenics, the selective repopulation of white and the selective extermination of black people. Homosexuality is being funded by the government to reduce the numbers of black people in the world. Just like feminism, for my young ladies out there, please do your research. Don't believe nothing I say. Feminism was created by the FBI and the CIA to get women out the home so the government could indoctrinate the children through television and social media any way they felt like it. Believe nothing I say. The information is out there. Do your research. Your rebuttal.
Okay, I just have a scenario.
Uh-huh.
So, as an education major, what if a kindergarten child has two moms or two dads? That's what they're used to. And they ask that in the classroom. What would you do about that if that's what they're used to?
If they ask what in the classroom?
Like, is this normal? My two moms and two dads?
If I'm the teacher in a public school,
Yes.
I would say I cannot entertain that. I wouldn't entertain that as an.
Why not?
Because I'm in a public school, and in a public school funded by the U.S. government that has a pro-LGBTQ agenda, if I answer that from a African traditional cultural perspective, that it is not our way of life, I could lose my job.
So you're saying, as a African descendant person, as a way of life, being gay or lesbian, that's just...
I'm saying if you want me to treat same-sex relationships as a normal, natural, healthy way of family development, you would have to show me a traditional African society that existed before the arrival of the enslaver and the colonizer that treated same-sex relationships as normal. I can assure you, you can't find a single one.
How would you answer that if
I'm
it was
sorry.
like a private school or a home school? To her point, I'm about to interrupt you. But you said if you was in a public school, but how would you answer if you wasn't?
Let's take my school, Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. I probably would still not answer it because it's such a politically charged issue and the government is funding it that I think I would stay away from it anyway. You follow me? Now, if I'm in a community, I'm very careful with people's children. You feel me? So if I know that child has two fathers or two mothers, I'm not going there because although I disagree with the lifestyle, I don't want to upset that child's understanding of life so much that it could confuse them. You know, it's just like when people like to open up the Bible and show Christians all the inconsistencies in their religion. I wouldn't do that. You know why? Because for all I know, that Bible might be the only thing keeping her from going back to selling her body on the street. That Bible might be the only thing keeping him from shooting somebody in the head. That Quran might be the only thing that keeps him from taking his own life. You follow me? So whether or not I know something to be true or false, I still have to put it within context of where that person is in their psychological, emotional, and political development. I believe that there's no compulsion in African consciousness, just like there's no compulsion in religion. So that is to say, I would never try to force my sister here and say, listen, you fine as I don't know what. It's a million brothers waiting for you when you get up out of here. I'm not going to do that. You understand? That's where she is right now. And I might come back and see her 20 years later. And she might be happily married with 5 kids. I don't know. Or you might be married to a woman. Either way, I'm going to love you with my sister because you're my sister. But we're going to agree to disagree on how families should be structured. Who is my number 2? And guess what? I'm still going to post your picture when you send it to me. Queen, give me your number 2.
Hi, Dr. Easton. My name is Kimberly Mars. I am a senior political science major.
I was poli-sci. What's your hometown?
My hometown is Jersey City, New Jersey.
I'll be speaking in Jersey City on May the 25th or 6th at the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Go right ahead.
So, as a Black student leader who currently holds the highest position that any student can have on campus,
Congrats.
as the SGA president, thank you. I was wondering how you feel about Black student leaders on campuses that are PWIs and how they are trying to dismantle the system from inside out.
And how they are trying to dismantle, give me the rest of that.
The system from inside out.
When you say the system,
of a PWI structure that goes against Black students.
understood. And I was Black Student Union president, and I was an SGA member, but not the president. I was the secretary. College is your training ground for the racist society that you're going to enter. And with that being said, I want all y'all to master how to deal with racism at Pace University. Because if you make a mistake in understanding racism or interacting with racism at Pace University, you will live to correct that mistake because college is a place of learning and education. When you get out into the real world, if you make a mistake in dealing with racism, how to navigate it and how to deal with it, it could cost you your job, your livelihood, or your life. So the benefit of a Black student at a PWI is you get an early first-hand introduction and test run into the white power structure. Everything you're going to see outside is right here on this campus. Learn it, master it, and navigate it, but never run from it. Don't run from it. And to that point, there's 3 things you better learn how to do if you're going to survive racism. And believe me, I had to survive it. I still survive it. I was the only Black man in damn near every grad class I went to. Most people thought I was there because I was tall. They thought I was a basketball player. Nobody told them I can't play. But anyway, number 1, document everything. European culture is more written than oral. African culture is more oral than written. In other words, if me and this brother make an agreement and we shake on it, that's as good as a contract. That's African culture. In American culture, not so. If you make a verbal agreement with somebody and you don't have no proof on paper that they did it, it never existed. And a lot of times we get caught up as African people is we still believe in the honor system. I gave you my word. That means nothing in America. It must be on paper. Document, document, document. Your teacher keeps on regularly giving you low grades. Did you write her a letter? Did you send her an email? You have to have a paper trail when you're dealing with white racism. Paper is more important than the truth. You must document everything. Keep a journal. Dates, times, places, and details. It will save your life. That's number one. Number two, you cannot be emotional dealing with white racism. There are people who will push your buttons on purpose to trigger you and then accuse you of being the angry black woman or the angry black male. Keep your emotions under control. The minute you get emotional, you just lost. Number three, we can do more together than we can do by ourselves. If you're having a certain problem with a certain issue on campus, why are you fighting it by yourself? Go and find 3 or 4 other African students. Go and find 3 or 4 other brothers. Go and find 3 or 4 other sisters. Fight it as a group. One of our big problems as African people in America, no matter what our language is we have a tendency to always fight alone, not as a group. Group work, or should I say teamwork, makes the dream work. Let's fight together. Great question. What you doing after undergrad?
I'm going to be doing the higher education administration program here at Pace.
Okay. You want to keep going?
Yeah.
Good. Keep going. And that's another thing. When you're done with undergrad, go straight to grad school. I don't want nobody taking no time off between oh, I'm tired, I need a break. No, you don't. Because you know what's going to happen? You're going to get pregnant. Oh, this is real. Listen, fellas, women, that's not offensive, it's the truth. I used to work in admissions office in college. Women get pregnant when they take breaks off. Fellas get women pregnant. That's not sexist, it's the truth. Stop being sensitive. Now, listen to me. When you take a break, you're going to get a job, you're going to get a car, you're going to get an apartment, you might end up with a child, and now you have to do what? Sustain your lifestyle. And now paying your bills becomes more important than taking your classes. Are y'all following me? When I was in grad school, I went straight from undergrad. When you go to grad school broke, you work harder. When you go to grad school broke, you remember why you're there. When you pull up to grad school with a Benz or some Balenciaga or some Gucci's on your feet, you might not be as motivated because your mind is going to start playing tricks on you and say, you already got it going on right now. What you need this master's for? You already got it going on right now. Don't play them games with your mind. Go to grad school broke. Straight out of undergrad, go straight back. And I know you don't like all-white Pace University, but guess what? If you want to get a full scholarship for grad school, you will stay your ass right here at all-white Pace University. You know what I tell students? I work with students, say, Dr. Umar, I want to go to an HBCU. Don't get me wrong. I would love for all of you to go to grad school at an HBCU. I really would. I never had a chance to go to an HBCU. I was going to get my PhD at Howard, and it took forever to send me the application. By the time I got the application, I had already got accepted by the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, right? Now, I would love for you to go to HBCU. But if grad school at an HBCU is going to cost you $20,000, $30,000 a year, and at Pace University, you can get a graduate assistantship where they're going to flip your whole bill, and all you got to do is serve as a dorm director or director of university sports or work in the financial aid office. Then you're going to stay right here at Pace. Because when you're completely done with your education, I want you to not only have your degree, I don't want you to have no student loan debt. Are y'all following me? Go with the money. And unfortunately, at most HBCUs, the black students are considered the majority and the white students are considered the minority. So sometimes you got to stay at a white school to avoid the student loan debt. Keep your loan debt down. Good question. Who's my number 3?
Right.
Yes, sir, King.
Thank you, Doctor. My name is William Page. I'm not a student here. I'm just a listener. My question is, what is your take on South Africa joining with these other countries as far as...
Bricks. Here's my take. Whoever controls the resources of Africa controls the world. Whoever controls the resources of Africa controls the world. If you study World War I and World War II closely enough, you will find that who intended to control Africa had something to do with the initiation of those wars. The Cold War between Russia and America was over what? Who gonna control Africa? What is the current war between China and America? Who gonna control Africa? And what is the war now between the G7 and BRICS? Who gonna control Africa? So you got Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They're about to cause a major nightmare for the Federal Reserve because they're about to put out their own currency, which is going to be backed by their gold. Why is that a problem for the US dollar? The US dollar was taken off the gold standard a long time ago. That money in your pocket has no monetary value, no mineral value. That's why it says promissory note. It is an intent to pay. It is not the equivalent of a mineral amount. That's why Barack Obama killed Gaddafi, because Gaddafi was working with the sub-Saharan African leaders to float an African currency. And since Africa is the most minerally rich continent in the world, if you have an African dollar that's backed by the gold, the diamond, the coltan, the gas, the oil, guess who has the most expensive currency in the world? Africa. So that's why Barack Obama had to kill Gaddafi. So BRICS is about to do exactly what Gaddafi did. Only difference is BRICS is going to tie it to gold, whereas the African leaders was going to tie it to all the resources. So I don't know how America is going to deal with this, because once that BRICS currency backed by gold hits the market, it's going to automatically drop the value of the US dollar. Now, let me take that to the psychology. Why is that relevant for African people in America? All of us, most of us, are African people in America. It's relevant because since we come from a legacy of enslavement, whether that's New Jersey enslavement or Pennsylvania enslavement or Puerto Rico enslavement or Cuban enslavement or Haitian enslavement, all we've known for the past 400 years was a white slave master. And many of us never thought that the white man can ever be outdone by anybody else. So in your lifetime, you are literally going to see the slave master of the African have to take a back seat to a new global authority, which will be headed by the Chinese. And let me be clear, Chinese is only using BRICS to advance their agenda to control the resources of Africa. Because at the end of the day, Russia is white, China is yellow. They don't ultimately trust each other, but they're working together because they have a common enemy. My enemy's enemy is my friend. That's why Russia and China cooperating. They will have to split at some point. You know why? White supremacy will not cooperate with yellow supremacy. Russia and China's union will last only as long as they get to dominate the American dollar. They will split because both of them have an agenda of global conquest. And it can only be one dictator. You've never seen a double dictator or a twin dictatorship. So at some point, Russia and China are going to go back to odds at each other. Remember when Mao Zedong went to visit Joseph Stalin many years ago, Joseph Stalin wouldn't even shake Mao Zedong's hand. He said, the Chinese are so far beneath me. He wouldn't even shake his hand. So Russia has a very long history of being racist against the Chinese people. You feel me? So this is just a temporary alliance to destabilize American global interests. I want American global interests to be destabilized, but guess what? Russian imperialism is going to be no better than American imperialism. Chinese imperialism is not going to be any better than American imperialism. And I'll add something else about the Chinese. If they take over Africa, which means that Africa is going to have a second revolution for independence. We had the first one in the 60s. We would have to have another African global revolution for independence against the Chinese. And this is going to be 50 times more violent and 50 times more bloody. Because what's the difference between the white man and the China man? The white man is a numerical minority on this planet. He's less than 10% of the planet Earth. The Chinese are second only to the Africans in terms of global population. And they're just about tied with the East Indians. And mind you, even though we have the most people, half of our people don't claim African. You see that? So if we got to go to war with China for control of Africa, that's going to be one hell of a war. See, the European, when he took Africa, he had to use technology, manipulation, psychological strategy. Chinese don't have to do that because they have the numerical strength to go toe-to-toe with African people. The white man doesn't have the numerical strength to go toe-to-toe with white people, with black people, so he had to use us. Chinese don't have to use us. He got enough of his own. I am very disappointed in Jamaican leadership. I'm very disappointed in African leadership. I'm very disappointed in a lot of Caribbean leadership because we are letting the Chinese have their cake and eat it too. And once the Chinese finish gobbling up the Caribbean, gobbling up Africa, gobbling up Central and South America, he gonna do just what the white man did 200 years ago. I have everything I need. This is now my country, and you're gonna work for me for free. We are witnessing re-colonialism all over again in yellow skin instead of white skin because we have not learned from our history. Who's my number 3? 4. King.
My question is 2 parts, so let me wrap. The first one goes like this. Is race involved in every decision or everything that goes on in your day-to-day life? And secondly to that, I've had conversations with people in here where, not racism, I meant to say colorism. So like you have someone like Bad Bunny, who's on the TV, he's on the Grammys, he's on everything, but he has a sound that comes from black people within his country, as you spoke of before, who wasn't really acknowledged. Is he a culture vulture? Are people who are a part of our culture but don't necessarily hold a dark tone, like as opposed to you to me? Are they culture vultures, or are they still a part of the culture, or is racism in their minds 24/7?
Okay, great question. Number 1, I would say colorism, or what I refer to as light skin supremacy and dark skin supremacy. Because you have dark skinned people who feel they better because they're original. They don't have no European blood in them. And then you got light skinned people who think they better because they look closer to the slave master, right? I would say on a subconscious level, there are very few Africans in the world who have not been affected by light skin supremacy, dark skin supremacy, because the slave empire was operated upon colorism. You feel me? It was so entrenched, especially if you have a Caribbean origin. Because see, in the Caribbean, you had a racial hierarchy that was codified by law. In America, there was no racial hierarchy codified by law. You either black or you white. Even if you was mixed race, you were still black. They called you mulatto, you were still black. There was no special privilege across the board. Now, certain colonies, yes, but federally, were you treated different because you was a mulatto? No, you were still black. In America, black, white, black, white, black, white. That's why when Africans from around the world come to America, they can melt in with us better because we never had a racially stratified system of color, right? In the Caribbean, you had mulatto, quadroon, octoroon. They had about 16 different levels. And check this. Your level of skin tone, the brother next to you, to me, y'all might look like the same shade. But to the law, he might be darker. And because he's darker, he can't work in the governmental complex, but you can. And the chocolate one can only work in the field. So in the Caribbean, your skin tone dictated what? Your occupation and aspiration. And that's why we have a skin bleaching problem in the African race today. Do y'all know we spend $10 million? Or is it billion? It's either million or billion. That's how much we spend globally on bleaching our skin. Why? Because privilege in the white man's world, opportunity in the white man's world is accorded based on what? Skin tone. How do you break that? You got to educate the children differently. But even if you educate the children differently, you don't break that unless you create a separate reality for them to participate in. In other words, y'all all my school children, y'all all 5th grade, hypothetically. I teach y'all skin color don't matter. If you got the blood of Africa, you African. The reason the Honorable Marcus Garvey's flag is red, black, and green. Red is the first color. Why? It's the blood that makes you African. Not everybody got chocolate skin. It's the blood that makes you African. I got family members, if you looked at them right now, you might think they white. And they Africans. So red is the first color because red is the blood. Black is the original color of the ancestors, and green is the mineral wealth of our continent. But the point is, even if I teach y'all, black is beautiful in every shade, but you got to go beg the white man for a job. that education don't mean nothing. Because in order for me to make it out there, I'm gonna have to straighten my hair. In order for me to make it out there, I'm gonna have to bleach my skin. I want to be a model and I got a voluptuous black body. They don't want this. I'm gonna go get some surgery so I can fit into some small clothes. You see that? So the education is important. But this is where I disagree with a lot of African historians. I don't care how much we teach our kids about their history. If you don't give them opportunities, if they don't get the same opportunities Chinese kids get, if they don't get the same opportunities the Anglo-Saxons get, if they don't get the same opportunities the Italians get, if they don't get the same opportunities the European Jews get, they will go right back to imitating their oppressor. Education is not enough. Education must be married to opportunity. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? I speak in prisons. I speak in prisons all the time. Them brothers and sisters in prison are extremely intelligent. They know their history. They know everything about Africa, the slave trade, colonization, but they in jail. You know why? Nobody gave them an opportunity. What good is knowledge of self if nobody's going to give me an opportunity to earn a livable wage? That's why we got mass incarceration. We are $2 trillion people. We spend $30 billion on hair care, ladies. $2 billion on Air Jordans. $4 billion on liquor. $800 million on chicken, turkey, beef, and pork. Billions on video games. And we don't even create no jobs. We're the only race who does not systemically create jobs for its own community. That's why nobody wants to belong to the African race, because the African race isn't producing for itself. Jewish kids can go to a Jewish community and get a job. Chinese kids can go to a Chinese community and get a job. When a black kid needs a job, who can he come to in the black community and get a job? We don't produce for ourselves, and we will never be respected until we do. The last part of that question, even if you are African, if you don't identify as African and you're using African culture to benefit yourself, you are a culture vulture. The only way you are not a culture vulture is if you identify unapologetically with your race. That's the only way. Because I know black people who culture vulture. They African, but they don't claim it. But they are benefiting themselves from African culture. That's a culture vulture. And then we have a bigger problem of non-African culture vulture. DJ Khaled is a culture vulture. DJ Vlad is a culture vulture. Eminem is a culture vulture. Macklemore is a culture vulture. See, here's what I want y'all to understand. Young people. I might got to come back and do my political science class, but listen. Don't you ever let a non-African feel so comfortable that they can do your dances, sing your songs, wear your hairstyle, beat your drums, dress like you, talk your slang, and soon when it's time to protest the police, they know where to be found. When the last time you seen Eminem at a protest? When the last time you seen DJ Khaled at the protest? DJ Khaled is an Arab, and ain't nothing wrong with that. I respect this culture. But do you really think the Arabic culture is going to let a black person come in and be named top DJ in their culture? How can an Arab be the #1 DJ in black culture? You will never be the #1 anything in Arab culture. We got a bad habit of letting outside cultures come in, exploit our culture, get rich off our culture, and then when it's time to fight for black people, they disappear into the night. That's an insult. That's an insult. Or you get the young brothers in high school, they'll say, Dr. Umar, my friends are white. They dress like me. They got a truck with rims. We eat, we smoke weed. I said, and guess what? How old are you? I'm 18. How old is he? He's 18. Come back when y'all both 30.
That's right.
Come back when y'all both 30. He might not even admit he ever knew you. Furthermore, he might be the district attorney that locks your ass up when you get caught with a nickel bag of weed. See, white children go through a stage of rebellion where they do blackness to rebel against whiteness. But it's only a stage. I tell it to the college boys, the football and the basketball players, the white girls that are sleeping around with all the black athletes, come see me in 15 years later. She's sexing you now. 10 years from now, she'll be locking your ass up. Stop playing yourself by thinking these other people are in your same boat. Everybody want to be black when it's time for hip hop. Everybody want to be black when it's time to dance. Everybody want to be black when it's time to get dressed. Everybody want to be black when it's time to go to the award show. Nobody want to be black when it's time to fight the government. Good question, King. Who my number 5? Elder.
According to Henry Britt, Brooklyn Housing Court is the second busiest court in the nation, second only to Los Angeles Superior Court. And the business of family court is separating children from their parents and denying joint custody to fathers.
Yep.
Would you weigh in on that?
Yes, I would. Slavery never ended, it only changed form. The way in which Child Protective Services is taking our children away from their families is insane. I just saw a case the other day where the mother and father just gave birth to a beautiful African baby, and they came and took the baby because they refused to give the baby vaccinations. I know other parents who are losing their children because they won't put them in special ed, won't get them diagnosed with ADHD, which don't even exist, won't get them put on psychiatric medication, which ain't going to do nothing but destroy the brain. We have to organize and we have to fight back. And you know what's sad? When they take our kids and put them in foster care, guess who gets more than a disproportionate share of our children to raise as their foster children? White same-sex couples. Black foster kids are more likely to end up with a white same-sex couple than with their own natural families. And when the grandmother and grandfather try to get their grandkids, they tell them, well, you got locked up 100 years ago for selling weed, so he can't live with you. Or you ain't got enough space in your house. You ain't got enough square feet. They come up with all kind of excuses not to give that child to his brother, sister, aunt, uncle, grandparents, but they'll give him to a same-sex white couple. All these black people out here, why are you giving our kids to other people? I'll tell you something else. Have you ever noticed? And I'm not picking on my white folks, I'm just being honest here. White celebrities will go and adopt a black child from Ethiopia, but they won't adopt a black child from America. They'll go and adopt a black child from Haiti, but they won't adopt a black child from America. You know why? Because the Haitian African kid don't know their rights. Ethiopian African kid don't know their rights. If you adopt a Haitian or Ethiopian African child and you are a Hollywood superstar and you turn them into a sex slave, are they going to tell on you? No. You know why? Because the way I'm living is nothing like the poverty I had in Haiti. It's nothing like the poverty I had in Ethiopia. So they can be abused, mistreated, oppressed, whatever you want, and they will not tell. An African American child knows their rights. They know to call 911. They know to tell the teacher. And that's why you got all these celebrities adopting black children from far, far away countries, because they know they will never have to hear from the authorities in those countries. There's a thin line between being somebody's foster child and somebody's child slave. And I don't have to tell y'all that America has a very large and a very lucrative underground sex trafficking ring. And you ladies in here, y'all better be careful when you go out at night. Don't go by yourself. Black women are at the top of the list. That means all of you. From Puerto Rican African to New York African, ladies, you better be careful. These men are abducting our women in broad daylight. They just pull up to you while you're walking down the street. 3 men jump out. It don't matter how strong you think you are. They throw you in that truck. Ship you off to a Middle Eastern country somewhere deep in South America. And there's people who will pay top dollar for certain types of women. And black women, you are at the top of the list because you are the original one. You're the only woman on the planet with the mitochondrial DNA. You have the Eve gene. Only the black woman has the Eve gene. No other woman on earth has the Eve gene. The gene of the original person that God put down here to make life. That's the African woman. The woman was first, not the man. I know that's what your Bible tells you, but it's wrong. Women were first. Be careful when you go out here. 11 to 14-year-old black girls are also at high risk. If you have a daughter, cousin, little sister between 11 to 14, you better know where she at all times. And this ain't just sex. They also doing governmental experimentation. They're also doing organ trafficking. Black men, if you think for 1 minute all them brothers being shot dead in New York City and shot dead in Detroit and shot dead in Philly and shot dead in Baltimore and shot dead in Chicago is senseless violence, you are out of your mind. A lot of those are orchestrated assassinations for organs. What is the one thing you need to live but you can't buy it from Walmart? A heart. What is the one thing you need to live you can't get it from Walmart? A kidney. What is the one thing you need to live and you cannot buy it at a store? A spleen. They are killing African people and selling your organs. Don't believe me? Go do your research, and I hope to God none of y'all are an organ donor on your driver's license. If you want to give your organs away to your friends and family, put it in your will. And all of you should have a living will. Put it in your will. Do not put organ donor on your license because you just became an easy target. You know everything in your body is in the system, right? Every organ in your body is in the computer system. They know what type of heart, what type of liver, what type of blood, what type of kidney, what type of spleen. And if there's some old rich white man in London who you happen to be a perfect match for, don't be surprised you slip into a manhole coming out the gas station. I'm being dead serious. Ladies, do not walk the streets at night. Brothers, if the sisters got to go somewhere, y'all walk with them or take them in a car. And be careful with the Uber and the Lyft. Don't get in the Uber or the Lyft unless you make sure the number on the app is the number on the car. A lot of women are being abducted through Uber and Lyft. The Uber pull up, you jump in it without making sure it's the same license plate on the app. Because they have radios that can pick up the Uber and the Lyft calls. And they're pulling up with the Uber light and the Lyft light. And y'all jumping in there, not double checking if that's the right person. And they taking you to no man's land. Be careful. Who's my number 6? King.
I'm not a student, I'm from the Bronx. I just wanted to know, how do you operate in the neighborhood? Like, I live in a neighborhood like Jackson Heights.
Uh-huh.
Red man, it's like real minute of us. So
Yes.
how do I operate with my boys, and I have a daughter? How do I operate and show them that, we're not going to be prejudiced or racist to anybody. We're still going to be us around that environment.
Right. Well, number one, you got to make sure your children know who they are. Number one, teach them who they are. Turn off the cartoons, that's white supremacy. Turn off the movies, that's white supremacy. Open up the books, right? Get the black books, get the black cartoons. Make sure you check out Everyone's Place bookstore in Baltimore. That's for all of you. Everyone's Place bookstore in Baltimore, down the street from the Great Blacks and Wax Museum. If you've never been, you need to go. It's one of the largest black book distributors in the country. So check out Everyone's Place. But make sure that everything in your house is black. Now, I had a black parent tell me, why do I want everything in my house black? There's all kinds of people in the world. Why is my house only about black? You know why? When your son leave your house, he's going to get all the whiteness he can handle. You do not need to give a black child anything white because he's going to get all the white he can at public school, daycare, media, news, government. There's no need to give him any more. And make sure they only play with black toys. You have to do that to teach them that there's nothing wrong with them. Because if you surround them with nothing but white stuff, and then they go outside and it's all white people, they're going to think something wrong with them. They have to be their own frame of reference. They have to be their own frame of reference. And by the way, black people can't be racist. Why? In your present condition, you cannot be racist. I need y'all to understand what racism is. Racism is a system created by all members of one race to systemically and institutionally deprive all members of another race of opportunity, privilege, and resource. Racism is about unfair control, domination of opportunity, resource, and privilege. And by that definition, every white person on earth is a racist. Because every white person loves the white privilege that they get as a result of your discrimination. If you know of a white person who has ever fought against systemic discrimination in all areas of life, so black people can get an equal playing field, give me their name. They do not exist. They do not exist. Don't confuse racism with bigotry. When I say racism, most of y'all say not all white people hate black people. I agree. Not all white people hate black people. That's a bigot. A bigot hates black people. A bigot wants to kill black people. A bigot shouts the N-word at you. That is a bigot. A bigot is an emotional fool. We're not talking about emotional fools. we're talking about politically sophisticated people who systematically operate to deprive black people locally and globally of your God-given fair share of resources, opportunities, and privileges. We 17% of America. Why we don't own 17% of the banks? Why we don't control 17% of the schools? Why we don't own 17% of the resources? See, when people start talking democracy, equality, let's talk equality, America. Give me my percentage of the population and everything that you own. And we ain't even talking reparations yet. We're just talking about representative resources and distribution of goods. America don't believe in no equality. Out of your mind. They did not build this country to treat other people fairly. They built this country to take advantage of other people. America been racist, is racist, always will be racist. That don't mean you hate America. It means you need to smarten up, get wise, and learn how to navigate. And we do not come out of this until we organize. The most honorable Marcus Garvey said, what the greatest weapon used against the Negro is disorganization. Malcolm X, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz said, the white man isn't smarter than the black man. He out-organizes you. Stokely Carmichael Kwame Ture said, if you organize a little, you get a little done. If you organize some, you get some done. But if you don't organize at all, you don't get nothing done. Black men ain't organized, black women ain't organized, black students ain't organized, ex-offenders ain't organized, homelessness ain't organized, youth ain't organized. Why do you think it's so easy to take advantage of us? We're not organized. We might protest, we might riot, we might vote, we might pray, but we don't come together and stick together long enough to achieve nothing. The last person who did that in America was Dr. King 55 years ago. We ain't had a major movement since. You want to make your mark? We got all kinds of problems out there waiting for you to solve it. But we got to get organized first. Brother there and brother with their hand in the back.
I have a question regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes, sir.
Since George Floyd, since he was killed, you saw a lot of companies throughout the country, across all industries, establish DEI initiatives. And I would like to hear your take on what type of DEI initiative can truly provide opportunities, resources, and privileges to disadvantaged communities.
The issue I have with many of the inclusion programs around the country, whether they are government funded, state initiated, is they only focus on social and numerical inclusion. I never see inclusion when it comes to the resources. I never see inclusion when it comes to the opportunities. So they'll say, hey, we're going to put a Latino African on our board of directors. We're going to put an American African on his steering committee. So you will give us a chance to give you our opinions. But you never give us control, decision-making control over how resources are allocated. See, this whole conversation on inclusion, integration, it's all social and superficial. It's all about making it look like we're at the table when we really don't have no power at that table. That's my issue. And so for those of you who are fighting for inclusion at this university, and even after you graduate from this university, don't let them play you by simply giving you a seat. The question is, how much power do I have when I sit in that chair? Because too often they will give a black person a seat so you can speak, but your speech influences nothing. They just needed to say that they were at the table. What good is being at the dinner table if I can't enjoy the meal?
I want to say something to that, right? Because there was a woman in here earlier. She said she was the SJ president. Like, that's a black woman in here, strong black woman. I'm gonna give her that. She's the SJ president. She's at the table, right? Now, her voice might be overheard or overshadowed by the powers at bay. Let's say the president of the university. But she got a voice amongst the people in here. Look, how many people is in here right now? 60 people? 70 people? That's a voice amongst the students. You talked about collectiveness and gathering together. So one person at the table could show other people, like, yo, we could be at this table. We could make our own table. How are we going to do this? But one leader is all it takes. One person in here right now could be that next king.
Right.
One person in here could be anyone. And I feel like it's important to say getting a seat at the table as opposed to making your own table, whatever it might be. But having a voice is important because you're heard by people and you change people's minds, and this could create the things that you were speaking about earlier.
I agree with you. I want to make one modification. Having that person at the table is meaningless unless those of us who are not at the table are organized behind that singular voice. Do you understand what I'm talking about? That voice at the table is useless unless the voices who are not at the table that they represent are organized to support whatever initiative she introduces. One of the biggest weaknesses of African children at a PWI is the organizations are not organized amongst each other. I will bet you that y'all have probably never had a meeting of all black organizations. That's the Latino fraternities, the African American fraternities, the Black Student Union, the African Student Union, all the black groups. How often do y'all come together, sit down, and strategize how to change policy at Pace University for the African students here? We are happy to be divided, and the white power structure knows it. What did I tell you earlier? Your time at Pace University is your chance to experiment and learn how to deal with white power. Do not waste it. I remember at Millersville University, right? We was only 500 students on like an 8,000 student campus. And we were so disorganized that the Black Student Union and one of the Greek fraternities would have an event on the same day when it's not enough events to go around. You ever run into that here? Why you got two organizations competing for the same day and the same time when y'all should be collaborating so nobody got to choose between them and them? I want to support everybody, but how can I support everybody when each organization is trying to be the head Negro in charge? You can take the slave out of slavery, but until the slave takes the slavery out of himself, he or she will never be free. You must conquer the Caucasian that lives in your consciousness. My brother.
So I want to talk about like role models in the community.
Yes.
So like most of the time, like when you grow up, you say like people look up.
Speak a little louder, King.
You say people look up to like drug dealers or
Right.
rappers and stuff.
Because most of the professional black men moved out.
Right. So how
And then we blame the athletes and the rappers for being a role models. Lil Wayne should not be a role model, right? LeBron James, I will accept him as a role model because I think he's lived a very stellar life, and I think his life has been exemplary for an athlete. He's never gotten any trouble. He got a black wife, right? But the true role model should be the dentists and the doctors and the school teachers and the engineers and the business owners. But what's the first thing we do as African people when we get a little bit of money, a couple college degrees, and a little bit of success? We run straight to the white neighborhood. Our definition of success includes imitation of the oppressor. Every black person I know, when they get a halfway decent education or job, they run to the suburbs to live with the white folks, dissipating our political power. You can't have no political power if you keep separating from each other, moving into white neighborhoods.
What about Nipsey?
Hold that thought. Continue that, King.
So I just want to say like how do we keep like those type of role models in the community to like make
Black men have to decide that we're going to be real men. And I'm saying that because I'm very disappointed in the black man as a community. We letting our kids kill each other on the streets. We letting them disrespect our elders and their mothers. We not building no institutions for our women. No black woman should have to go beg a white man for a job. No black woman should have to go beg a white man for a job. Black men should be organized in creating whatever our women, children, and elders need. We're not doing that because we have gotten hypnotized with the white man's selfish capitalism. Me, myself, and mine. When Deion Sanders abandoned Jackson State to go to a white school with less than 2% black students on it, that was a disgrace and an embarrassment. But guess what? A lot of black men saw nothing wrong with it. You know why? Because they have no loyalty to their race. Same reason why we date and marry outside of our race. We have no loyalty to it. And for my black women who are raising sons, raise a man, ladies. 2 mistakes I see black women make who are raising sons on your own. And you shouldn't be raising them on your own. That's another issue with us brothers, right? But number one, you better teach your son to respect black women. Too many black mothers are not teaching their sons to respect black women. That's number one. And number two, you better make sure your son respects you. Too many black mothers allow their sons to disrespect them. And number three, make sure you're raising your son with some discipline. Too many of y'all are raising weak boys with no discipline and no self-control. If you are letting your son do whatever he wants, you're setting up a prisoner for a future prison. Because this entire society that we live in is organized to trap and destroy black males who don't have no discipline. So you better make sure your son got sexual discipline, emotional discipline, financial discipline, economic discipline. Make sure he has discipline. Your daughters too. But y'all tend to do a better job with the girls. Y'all make sure your daughter is strong and responsible because you know what it's like to be a young black woman struggling. But your son, y'all love him and y'all spoil him and y'all buy him everything. Y'all don't make him work for nothing. And all you doing is creating a horrible husband for somebody else's daughter. It's very true. I'm a psychologist. King.
How you doing? My name is Dante. I didn't go to this school, but I went to Portland for my undergrad in sport management. I went to Syracuse in journalism, got a master's from there. So
Syracuse. While you was at Syracuse, did you visit Queen Mother Harriet Tubman's grave?
No, I didn't.
Shame on you. She only buried 20 minutes from campus. Go ahead.
So I live in Peekskill, 20 minutes up north. I'm a recreation leader. I'm the first person of color to hold that title. I got two questions for you because I was
Peekskill. How many blacks up there?
Now it's changed. It used to be predominantly black, but now it's predominantly Ecuadorian because it's a sanctuary city. So
okay.
You know, they got the lab. But I employ black men and all that stuff, black women too. But it's a two-part question. How you bring up Deion Sanders? Like my question to that is, how is the sense that he's wrong if he's trying to do things better and they're not giving him
for who?
For I would say himself
and that's the problem. That is our problem. Black people are a me first people. Chinese, they have their individuals. Don't get me wrong. Everybody got their all human beings have an ego. And all human beings have their own agenda. I don't care if you're red, yellow, brown, white, or black. But in most other groups, the groups that run this world because they have a we first mentality. Me come second. Black people, me come first. We come second. Deion Sanders was in a position to create a new high school to HBCU pipeline for our athletes, where the tens of millions of dollars that the PWIs are stealing from the black community by taking all of our athletes in, making sure almost none of them graduate, by the way. Did y'all know almost none of the black Division I athletes you watch on TV graduates with a bachelor's degree from these white colleges? So they use them up for 4 years, spit them out. Deion could have reversed that system and had them brothers going to HBCUs. Do you know what an HBCU could do? 1 year with the type of sports revenue that Duke University get or University of Alabama gets. He would have single-handedly saved the HBCU legacy because right now, half of all HBCUs are on target to be closed down in the next 30 years due to a lack of funding. He could have single-handedly changed that. I'm not saying it's Deion Sanders' responsibility alone. But what I am saying, if you go to any of our African ancestors and ask them, Do you agree with what Deion Sanders did? None of them would.
So then how do you,
That was a selfish ass move.
how do you tell then kids from the hood to go to an HBCU when these public white schools are giving these NIL deals to say, yo, I can change your life and give you this?
Exactly. If money is the most important thing in your life, there's nothing we can do about
You
it.
do gotta change your family's life though. Like, I feel like that's a little bit insensitive. Some people come from situations where they gotta pay for their family.
Deion Sanders don't come from that situation. He's a multi-millionaire.
No, not Deion, but like other kids. Kids.
Again, you have your personal agenda. What is the agenda for the race? We are a people who are systemically oppressed globally. You can't do what everybody else do, or you will stay right where you are. See, the hard work that made the Anglo-Saxon what he is was put in 200 years ago. The hard work that made the Chinese what he is was put in during the reign of Mao Zedong. We never put that in. So when are we going to, for one generation, 20 years is all we need. 20 years, every black man and woman say, every decision I make and every dollar I spend is for the best interest of African people. If we did that for 20 years, if we started today, April 20th, 2023, full solar eclipse in Aries, okay? Total solar eclipse in Aries. You do that today, 20 years from now is 2043. We'd be a new people. We'd be a new people. So it doesn't have to be your whole life. But if none of us sacrifices, that's the problem with us. We don't have a sacrificial spirit. And until you get it, we never climb out. We're going to keep on being an oppressed, impoverished people with a whole bunch of millionaires that we look up to. Is that what we want, y'all? Everybody else be broke, but you got a LeBron, you got an Oprah, you got a Jay-Z. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in improving the quality of life for all African people globally. And we can't do that if black men don't sacrifice. Part of being a man is putting the people above your personal agenda. We don't do that. And our people are suffering because of it. All this black on black crime, this is all economics. This is economic desperation. Brothers need food. They got kids they got to feed. And ain't nobody gonna give me no job. Well, so guess what? I'm just gonna have to rob your mother. I'm just gonna have to shoot you. I'm gonna have to steal your car. I'm gonna have to hustle your credit cards. Because the black community is not providing for its own. English speaking, Spanish speaking, Portuguese speaking, we are not operating as a people. We operate as a race of individuals, which makes it difficult for other people to respect us. We could take over this planet in a month if we got our act together. In a month, you could change the way this world operates. Ain't nobody got the ideas we got. Nobody got the talent we got. Nobody got the ingenuity we got. But we don't use it for the race. We use it for ourselves, or we sell it to white people. King, go ahead.
We're going to wrap the Q&A in
All right.
6 minutes, but I wanted to ask, because you mentioned capitalism earlier, which do you think is better for black people, the system of capitalism or socialism?
Neither one. Pan-Africanism. And let me give you the difference. Capitalism is ownership of the means of production by the few. Capitalism, a few white men own all the land. Bill Gates has just become the largest owner of arable land in America. Did y'all know that? Yeah. Trivia question. Why is a computer mogul, Bill Gates, buying up all the farmland in America? You know why? What did I talk about earlier? Population control. You want some good fruits and vegetables? You're going to have to get them from me. And I'm getting all GMO crop. I'm going to engineer the crop so it does not benefit your body. It kills it. Another company just bought up all the rental property in America. A big deal. Why you want to buy up all the rental property? So people who need a place to stay can't get a place to stay. This is what they're doing for black. They are preparing to make you hungry and homeless while we buy sneakers, jeans, party, and smoke. And for my weed heads, yes, you better be careful. Because the new marijuana that's out now ain't even real. It's synthetic, made in China, and it's sprayed with artificial cannabinoids from China, which are more toxic and deadly and neurologically damaging than opioids. We're about to get hit with a new marijuana crisis that's going to make the opioid crisis look like a picnic. Y'all better stop smoking that weed. And if you smoking weed, you better know who growing it, and they better be growing it themselves. They did not legalize weed just to legalize weed. They legalized weed to destroy your ass with the weed. Puff, puff, pass. I don't smoke, never did. Oh, hold on, then I'm gonna come to you. Capitalism is ownership of the wealth by a few. Communism is ownership of the wealth by the state. Pan-Africanism is ownership of the wealth by the people. I am not a capitalist or a communist. Neither one works. Both came out of the minds of European racists. I am a pan-Africanist. Queen.
First, I want to say thank you for...
Hold that thought. You had your hand, and who's going to be the last one for the night? I want a sister. Queen in the back. You the last one. Go ahead.
Okay. First, I want to say thank you for bringing up the point about building your own table, because that's something that
Build your own.
As the SGA president. But my final question for you is, how do you feel about interracial relationships and how they shape Black economics in schools?
And give me that last one about Black economics.
How interracial relationships shape Black economics.
How interracial, okay. I don't support interracial marriage. Not because I dislike anyone, because I don't. But if we want to save the Black community, we got to save the Black family. Number one. Self-determination is a principle of Pan-Africanism. We do everything ourselves, include build family. Marriage is a business arrangement. Kobe Bryant married Vanessa, right? Kobe Bryant was damn near a billionaire. He was murdered, and all his wealth went to Vanessa. Is Vanessa doing anything for the Black community? Is she even thinking about doing anything for the Black community? Marvis Marvelin Hagler died from the COVID vaccination. He was one of our great Black middleweight boxing champions. He was married to a white woman. Has she done anything for the Black community with his money? No. Tiger Woods married a white woman who was a housemaid. He cheated on her. She got $1 billion of his estate. She went from cleaning homes to being a billionaire. Why would you take from us and give to another people who have already stolen enough? To me, interracial marriage is financial treason. Interracial marriage is economic betrayal. How dare you take from my community and give to another who has already stolen enough? I'm gonna go to the psychological. Black men marry white women because they want to be white men themselves. I'm gonna go a step further. And by the way, that's a quote from Frantz Fanon, Black psychiatrist who is married to a white woman himself, one of our greatest Black revolutionary minds, Wretched of the Earth. Please read Frantz Fanon. All my political science majors, education majors, revolutionaries, read Frantz Fanon. He wrote a book called Black Skin, White Mass. All of y'all should read it. Black Skin, White Mass. In the book, he said it. Black men have inferiority complexes. They need validation from the white woman to feel equal to the white man. But I'm gonna go a step further. Black men marry white women because the white woman for the Black man is a surrender flag that he shows to the white power structure to let them know he is not a threat. Did y'all hear what I just said? The white woman is the Black man's I surrender flag. Because whenever I'm with my white woman, the white man know I'm no threat at all. Ain't no way in hell you sleeping with a snow bunny and you care about Black folks. That's right, Charles Barkley, Shannon Sharp, all them Negroes. They are no threat at all. And that's why they get the white girl. They let the white man know I'm safe, massa. You can trust me. Snow Bunny, Shannon Sharp. You can trust me. So I can't do it. I can't do it. When Marcus Garvey was amongst us 100 years ago, you couldn't join the movement if you was married or dating a non-African woman. His son, the Honorable Marcus Garvey Jr., who passed away a few years ago, he changed the rule. And he said you could be a member, but you can't be a leader. So in the Garvey movement today, you could be a member if you're in an interracial marriage, but you cannot be a leader. And I agree with that. You can't lead me nowhere if you can't even. How are you going to be committed to Black people? You can't even commit yourself to a Black woman. It's a complete contradiction. And the same thing goes for the Black woman. Y'all not off the hook. Y'all out here chasing these white boys. And for the life of me, I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand why the black goddess of the universe would dare let your oppressor climb up in your heaven and inject all his ancestors into your earth. Oh, Lord, have mercy. Harriet Tubman, save me! Sojourner, Ida B, Fannie Lou, come get me. Because you do know when you make a baby, that's two sets of ancestors. When you make a baby, that's two sets of ancestors. So in your line, you got Marcus Garvey and Kwame Nkrumah and Steve Biko and Sekou Touré and Angela, well, she's a living, Harriet Tubman and Sojourner and Frederick and Marcus and Nat Turner. And you laid with a white man. Guess who in his family? Adolf Hitler, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. And then when your son come out acting crazy, how you gonna be part slave and part slave master? But with that being said, to all my mixed race Africans, I accept mixed race Africans as full-blooded Africans if they identify. For me, it's a two-pronged test whether you're African. Are you biologically black and are you psychologically black? You could be blue, black, purple like Clarence Thomas, but if you don't identify with the race, I don't accept you as an African. You must be biologically and you must be psychologically black. Was those all my questions? Let me get this brother. I'm gonna give you the last one. Go ahead, King. Wait, did I get you, Queen?
No, my question related to her.
Okay, so you good. Go ahead, King.
I'm Jonah White Wilson. I'm a sophomore here. I'm a marketing major.
Strong.
From Maryland.
I need you to market natural hair back to black woman. Go ahead.
Do you think that is a disservice to black people, just calling them Africans, with African being named after a white man, Pan-Africanist, taught by the most honorable Elijah Muhammad? Okay, I'm not sure if the honorable Elijah Muhammad taught that fact, but if he did, he was wrong. Scipio Africanus did not name Africa. The name Africa is an ancient indigenous name that was given by the ancestors. The syllables of the word Africa can all be found in the ancient Egyptian text. And it has been traced by both white archaeologists and black archaeologists as predating Scipio Africanus. And guess what the word Africa means? In one interpretation, birth of man. In another interpretation, from the soul of God. Af is from, Ra is God, Ka is spirit. I come from the soul of God. No white man named Africa. That's one of the biggest lies being told. That's an original word for our people. And it's funny because you got black people running around talking about some they Native Americans, right? They Cherokees and Choctaws. Well, guess what? Cherokees own slaves. Choctaws own slaves. Seminoles own slaves. My mom was half Cherokee. Okay, was she a part of the Cherokee Nation or was she just a slave of the Cherokee Nation? See, we got to study our history. We so ashamed of being black, we will claim anything. Have you ever noticed when a black person find out they got a little bit of something else in them, they act like they hit the damn lottery? My great-grandma was Jewish. Oh my! And they won't even let your ass in a synagogue nowhere. I knew a sister, she found out her great-great-great-grandfather was Irish. She turned her whole room into the Boston Celtics. Listen, I'm not saying you can't own that because that's your ancestry, but that doesn't blot out your Africanity. We have the strongest genes in the world. I don't care what you mix us with, it's still African. So how you get off ignoring the African and claiming it's 1/22nd, 1/30th, 1/16th of somebody else's blood that won't even recognize you? King, do we got time for him or no?
Yeah.
Okay, last one. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for all this amazing insight. My question relates to strengths. And so if you were to conduct a SWOT analysis, and we've heard a lot about weaknesses and threats, but in terms of strengths, what do you see as a strength that we can continue maximizing?
The diversity. The diversity amongst the African race is a strength, but it gets overlooked. You know why? Because we are so committed to uniformity. We want everybody to be a Muslim, everybody to be a Christian, everybody to be a Democrat, everybody to be a Republican, everybody to believe in God, everybody not to believe in God, everybody to think this way, do it this way. I love the fact that the Puerto Rican African may look at the race problem differently than the Nigerian African. I love the fact that the Panamanian African's approach to our economic liberation may be different from the New York City African. Diversity is to be embraced. And why? If you got a million different perspectives, how can you come up with the wrong solution? We got to stop being afraid of a brother or sister with a different opinion. Me and the princess right here, we disagree on LGBTQ. But guess what? That don't make her my enemy. I still need her at the table to solve the problems of the race. The only way she can become my enemy is if she aligns herself with the white LGBTQ against heterosexual black alpha males, as some of our LGBTQ sisters are doing. I know she's not doing that, but we do. That is an issue where some of our LGBTQ sisters will rock out with the white feminists against the heterosexual black males. And we can't do that. Black man, that's another thing. Black men have to stop trying to publicly humiliate black women on social media. I'm sick and tired of black men making YouTube videos and TikTok streams and Instagrams talking about how you don't like black women, they no good, they not worth your time. What other man do you see all over social media denigrating his woman? Nobody does that but us, and you are unworthy of being called a man if you're doing that. I don't care how bad the black woman made you feel. Take it up with her. Take it up with a group of sisters. Have the argument in private. Have the conversation with your brothers in private. But we cannot go out in public and tell the world we don't care about black women. Black women are already the most raped, the most abducted, the most mistreated, the most beaten. Our sisters are the most vulnerable. Yeah, she might have more education than us. She might make more money than us, but do not get it twisted. The white man don't care about the black woman any more than he cares about the black man. United we stand, divided we fall. Last one.
Peace, King. My name is Joe Swell. I
Peace.
graduated from here about 5 years ago with an accounting degree. And I'm actually a health and safety professional. So my question is related to what you brought up earlier. You broke down your family tree and your lineage. I feel like, as a Dominican man, I feel like a lot of our history, especially our African history, has been deleted. How do yourself or myself go about searching, discovering your history?
That's a good question, because one of the things we're going to do when we open up the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, and I would invite all y'all to come on down to the school. Some of y'all who graduate and send me a resume if you want to work at the school, fdmgresumes@gmail.com. Remember, you got to be natural, right? I never had to trace that tree because since we was related to Frederick Douglass, the family always kept it together. So it was passed to me, I didn't have to find it. But if you're trying to reconstruct your tree, number one, you got to have a lot of energy because you got to do a lot of research. If you know your ancestors' names, birth date or death date, and county of birth, you can put your whole tree together. I'm going to say it again. If you have your ancestors' names, birth date and or death date, and county of birth or death, you can put your whole family tree together. If the more famous your ancestors were, the easier it is to track. Let's say you had a grandfather who was a pastor of a church. It's going to be easy because the first thing you're going to do is pull up the archives on all the newspapers on the time that he lived, search his name, pull him up. And then you're going to find other relatives when you pull him up. If your ancestor owned a business, if your ancestor was a singer, a dancer, a politician, a civil rights leader, the more famous the ancestor and the more unique the name, the easier it is to find them. If your name is real common, let's say your great-great-grandfather's name was Sam Jones. It's a million of them. So you're going to be doing some digging, right? But if it's Ifatunde Oguntade, then it ain't going to be that much work. But libraries, historical societies, genealogical societies, vital statistics, and I want to also tell you guys, African American Genealogical Society. Look up the African American Genealogical Society. They help you trace your family tree. And if any of your ancestors were in the Civil War, you go to the United States. What is the library? I was just there 2 years ago getting copies of all my ancestors' Civil War documents. It's in D.C., a few blocks from the Smithsonian African American Museum. It's not the Library of Congress, but Library of Congress if they was in the service as well, but I wasn't at the Library of Congress. This is a Civil War library in DC if you had an ancestor in the Civil War. But if you had an ancestor in any war, Library of Congress. So first you got to find out who your ancestors were and find out anything that they did so you kind of know the occupation. And the one thing y'all got to do, any old people in your family, you better write down everything you can about their memory about your ancestors. You got a 90-year-old grandma and you didn't ask her to tell you the family story, you better get with it before she go to the ancestors. You got a 75-year-old uncle, you got an 80-year-old great aunt. Do not let your elders die before you get the family records, the family chronology, the family history. I made a big mistake. One of my great aunts kept telling me to come to her house so she could tell me about my mother's father's family. I'm related to Frederick Douglass from my father's mother, but this was my great aunt who was my mother's aunt. I had a grandfather who was taught by Booker T. Washington at Tuskegee. And she told me, come to the house, I'm gonna give you all the history. And I got so busy with saving black people, I never got around to the house. She went to the ancestors and all her knowledge of the family went with her. I'll never get it back, y'all. So I'm telling you, young people now, don't make the mistake that I made. I would go to every old person I can this summer. While y'all on break, get that. Take out an audio recorder, take out your iPhone and let them talk. Where were you born? Where were your father born? Where was his mother born? Because as African people, we believe in ancestors. They are our angels. They travel with us. One of the differences between African culture and other cultures, when you die, you don't exit the family. You just exit the body, but the spirit stays in the house. Your ancestors remain with you, and we continue to talk to them as if they were right there. We give them a room. We give them water. When we eat, they eat. When we make a plate of food, they get a plate of food. Your ancestors are always alive and always with you, and you can talk to them. They are not God. They were created by God to help you achieve your destiny on earth. You must honor your ancestors.